Hello and welcome to Mindshift Mastery. My name is Rebecca King and I'm one of the brain changers from Moonbeam Monday Training and Coaching. Thank you all for being here today, whether you're here live or whether you're watching the recording. I'm really looking forward to sharing this hugely valuable information with you. Now, for those of you who are here live today, it's great to see your faces. Thank you so much. I look forward to interacting with you. And of course, for those of you watching the recording, it's great to have you here. Now, just a little bit about Moonbeam Monday. Moonbeam Monday Training and Coaching is made up of me and my business partner, who is also my mum, Yvonne. So you will hear me refer to Yvonne throughout the session. Now, I am really excited, as I said, to be here sharing this life-changing information with you. Now, I spent more than 20 years in the professional and the corporate world, and it was in a variety of industries and in a variety of different roles. And of course, when I was in it, I could see that there were problems. Of course, we're all aware that every workplace has issues along the way, but I was always too close to see what the real problems were. And now that I've stepped away from that environment, I'm going back to help people in a very different capacity now, because over those years, I have seen that there are three big issues that just don't seem to go away. And they are that everyone is stressed, people are riddled with anxiety, and this sense of overwhelm is really killing our culture. You know, this word overwhelm, it's become one of those buzzwords. We use it a lot. And I'm here to tell you that the drivers of these problems usually have nothing to do with work. They're the personal pressures that people are suppressing on a daily basis. So I'm going to share with you the secrets about how your mind works. And I call them secrets because that's kind of what they are. Nobody tells us this until we go looking for it, until we find, a webinar like this. We don't realize these things. I'm also going to help you understand why you're triggered by certain events, whether it be at work or in your personal life. And I'm going to give you some valuable tools to begin retraining your brain. And you can use these with your team in your workplace as well. And this is really the introduction into how you can, it can help you and your team ditch that stress, anxiety, and overwhelm professionally and personally. So I want to begin by asking you to imagine this. So imagine if desire was all you needed to get your team to do whatever you wanted. Imagine that. No matter what you asked of your team, they did it on time, to the quality that you wanted. I want them to do a good job. That's all I need as a leader. Now, imagine how cool that would be. But we all know that that's not always the case, okay? Information gets lost in translation, messages get mixed, deadlines get missed. The quality is perhaps not up to the standard that we want or we're hoping for. But of course, you all know this. You need more than just desire. If you only needed a desire for that, you'd have everything that you wanted. Everything would be done on time. Okay, but you need to understand how your mind works and learn how to retrain it. And up until 4 years ago, I didn't know that this was possible. What I mean by that is, obviously, I knew that I could learn things. I've been learning my whole life. I knew that I could make changes in my life, but it never occurred to me that I could retrain my brain out of the horrible place that I had ended up in. And I mean on a psychological sense. This was me. Now, this isn't literally me in a cage, but this is how I felt. Okay, I felt like I was trapped in a psychological cage. I had everything that I needed, most of what I wanted. I had the job, the car, the house, the friends, I traveled. But what many people didn't know was that I'd lived with depression for more than 20 years. And it was a deep depression. Okay, so, I probably appeared quite confident, happy, positive in a lot of ways, but I was really struggling on a daily basis. And then later, I developed a crippling anxiety disorder. And that started small. I noticed I had what I now know is an anxiety attack, like the anxiety just took over. And then about 6 months later, the same thing happened. I didn't know what was going on at that time. I didn't know that I was feeling anxiety, but it got worse and worse. And then I began describing myself as having anxiety. And at the time, I thought it was purely work-related. I felt like I was under so much stress and I was overwhelmed that this was creating the anxiety. The thought of going to work just put me into a downward spiral. I hated being there. And there were some days that I literally couldn't get out of bed to even go and have a shower, let alone get in the car and go to work. But it actually wasn't the work that was the problem. Okay, the work was simply the trigger. It was everything that I'd experienced in my life up until that point. Now, like everyone, I've had my fair share of, bad experiences in life. I've experienced traumas in my life. I've lost loved ones. I've had personal illness, in addition to the depression. I've been in an emotionally abusive relationship, which took its toll. I've worked in many toxic workplaces. So it's no different to any one of you. We've all had traumas in our life. But all of these things had a ripple effect on every area of my life, professional and personal. And I got to the point where I was completely overwhelmed. I was lost. My self-confidence was at an all-time low. My self-worth was shattered, and I really was at the end of my rope. I was in a bad place. But this is me now. Okay, this is me and my mum, Yvonne, as part of Moonbeam Monday. And the difference is quite astounding to myself and even people who have known me for a long time. It's hard to believe sometimes that I went from being so low to where I am now. So how did I do it? Well, I found the tools to set myself free from that psychological cage that I was in. And I tell you what, it has completely changed my life. I feel like I found my why. And I thought I had found my why already, but this was my true purpose. I still felt like I was floundering a bit, before, but this has given me my reason for getting out of bed every morning. Now, I look forward to going to work, which is only moving to the next room, really, but I look forward to it every day. Some tasks are harder than others, but I look forward to it every day. And so here I am now, partnered with my mum, doing incredible life-changing work with individuals and organizations to help people break free from their psychological cages. Now, was it easy? Not always. No. Did it get messy? Yes, very. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, what is easy, however, for all of us is to think that you can't do this. That somehow you're different, that you've been through more than anybody else, that it's affected you more, that your feelings of anxiety and overwhelm are worse than others, or that someone else is causing the stress and the anxiety and the overwhelm. But that is simply not true. The only thing that stops you from eliminating stress, anxiety, and overwhelm is you. Okay, it's your belief systems, the limitations you put on yourself, and the patterns that you repeat over and over. And we all have these patterns that we repeat over. These are the things that are stopping you. And becoming aware of this is the first step to making change. So shortly, I'm going to talk about beliefs and values. And you might be surprised to learn that we absorb these beliefs and values at a very young age. And in fact, approximately 70% of your identity is formed by the age of 7. 7 years old. Okay, so from 0 to 7 is when we absorb the majority of these beliefs and these values. So you might very well ask right now, Beck, what has this got to do with stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in the workplace? Well, remember at the beginning, I told you that the things that we think are the problem in the workplace rarely have anything to do with work. This is why. Because many of us are living our lives based on someone else's view of the world, the values and the beliefs that we absorbed at a young age. So we're not taught to question these beliefs and these values because it's not something that our parents or our caregivers were taught and know how to do. So now we spend the majority of our week at work, And gone are the days where we can simply expect people to leave their personal life at the door. In fact, that's never really been possible, even if it was an expectation. But these beliefs and these values, they follow us into the workplace, and the experiences that we have in our personal lives, they come to work with us, and they impact the relationships that we have at work, our communication style, our mood, and our attitude. You know, we store all of this in our mind and in our body, and this impacts how we relate and react to future events. So if you think about this, think of an example. How many of you have had an example of, or have an example of reacting in an unexpected way? You know, maybe you're at work, maybe the boss comes over to you and says something to you or asks you to do something, and you react in an unexpected way. You know, you react angrily, or you burst into tears. And if this hasn't happened at work, it might have happened in your personal life. You know, most people have seen this, have had this experience. And there's a reason for this, okay? It's not just because Mercury's in retrograde or we're feeling a little bit funny. There is a reason. And when I go into the filters of the mind shortly, you're going to understand why. So first of all, I want to ask you a question. So it's a multiple choice question, and I just want you to share your answer in the chat box, if you will. So what will get you more? Is it reading something, taking action, or surfing the net? A, B, or C? What will get you more? What will get you a result? B, taking action. Yeah, absolutely, of course. Taking action is always going to get you more than just reading something or surfing the net, because we grow from action, don't we? The only way that we can grow is by taking action. So who achieves their goal of running a marathon? Again, A, B, or C? Is it A, someone who studies other marathon runners? Is it B, the person who buys the most expensive, the prettiest shoes? Or is it C, someone who sets a strategy and trains consistently? Yeah, C, yeah, exactly. It's someone who sets a strategy and trains consistently. You can do as much study of marathon strategy as you want, but if you don't get on the road and start running, you're not going to make those 42 kilometers, I think it is. You can have the best possible shoes with padded soles and whatever makes good running shoes, but unless you actually train and get out on the road, they're not going to be any good to you. You're not going to win the marathon. Because people who take action get rewarded. And for those of you who are here today or watching the recording who are in a leadership position, who are leaders in the workplace, I want you to understand that there are two sides to this. When you're a leader, when you as a leader take action, you get rewarded by your team as people who take action, and they get rewarded by seeing everything progress. And it spills into their personal lives. And as you'll appreciate, when you do the work and you make positive changes in your personal lives, it spills into the professional space, you know, because we were talking about we bring personal to work and vice versa. So it works both ways. So supporting your team to overcome stress, anxiety, and overwhelm at work will have significant impact on their personal lives too. So taking action is exactly what I did to get out of that psychological cage. And by doing so, I'm a completely different person these days. You know, people tell me that, the people that have known me for a long time. I'm happier, I'm more energized, I'm more positive. People actually want to be around me for my energy. I work for myself now, of course, which I absolutely love. I love being out of the workplace. But the biggest thing for me is that there's no more depression and there's no more anxiety. Now, when I talk about that, I talk about depression and anxiety as that thing we label ourselves with, all right? So obviously there are certain situations that make me feel anxious at that particular time. I am human, after all. I get nervous still, but I don't live with anxiety, okay? So I just wanted to make that differentiation. And how did I make that happen? I learned a secret, and here's that secret that I learned. I learned that thoughts become things. What we think becomes a thing. Right? I learned how to retrain my brain of the destructive thoughts that I was having over and over again. I mastered how to control my thoughts. And when I talk about controlling thoughts, some people do get a little bit antsy. They think, oh my goodness, mind control. And yeah, I am talking about mind control, but I'm talking about you controlling your mind, not me or someone else controlling your mind, you controlling your thoughts and your mind. And I erased the old obsessive and compulsive thought patterns that I had, which were taking me down that path of a life that I didn't want, both at work and in my personal life. And when I learned all of this, I noticed an immediate difference. Now, as I said, I've encountered quite a bit of trauma in my life, as many of us have, to varying degrees, and it used to rule my life. But when I learned how to do all of this, I finally took charge of my mind. I retrained my brain. And up until then, I really had believed that my past and everything that I'd been through equaled my future. You know, this is me. I am this way because of what I've been through, and it's always going to be this way. But I know now that this doesn't have to be the case. So how did I change this? I took action. And yes, that slide is supposed to punch you in the face, because action is where it's all about. So I got unstuck. I hear that word a lot. I feel stuck. So I got myself unstuck. You know, I figured out what it was that I actually wanted from my life and how to get it. I literally rewired my brain. And all it took was a series of small changes that I gained, you know, the information that I gained from my coach. And it's kept creating profound shifts and improving my life. So like I said, no more depression, no more anxiety, no more days on end in bed, no more not wanting to get up and go to work. I mean, I don't go very far for work now. I walk into the next room, but I'm always keen to be here. And all from making that one decision. And that decision was to retrain my brain. And that's why I do what I do now. I was so impressed with the results that I got from myself and the results that I saw other people getting, that I decided I needed to help other people do this too. So now that's what I do full time. I'm a master NLP practitioner. I'm a coach. I work with individuals and workplaces, and I help people eliminate stress, anxiety, and overwhelm for good and find purpose. So I mentioned NLP. So what is NLP? Some of you might be familiar with what NLP is. In a nutshell, it started as a model of how we communicate to ourselves and others, and it works on the belief that the map is not the territory. And what I mean by that is that the words we use are not the event or the item they represent. Okay, it's not the full story. There's always two sides to a story. So the internal representations that we make about an outside event are not necessarily the event itself. And you'll understand that a little bit more when I talk about the filters of the mind. So there's a lot involved, but basically it's the agent for creating impactful and lasting change. And if we want to feel better, if we want to feel different, or we want to eliminate this stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, whether it be for us or for our team, we need to change or reprogram the way that we think. And that's why NLP is important, because it provides the platform for change. And Psychology Today magazine summed it up well when they said NLP is the most powerful vehicle for personal change in existence. That is a very powerful statement. So that's what NLP is all about. And there's actually some pretty famous people who you'll know of who use NLP. So number one, everybody knows Oprah, right? Now, she had an awful upbringing. She was pregnant by 14. She was sexually molested. She had a pretty crap childhood, but she is now one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, one of the most successful people in business, okay, uses NLP. Russell Brand, you know, everybody knows Russell Brand is a little bit of a strange guy, a little bit of a weirdo. He has battled with addiction for a lot of his life, but he's used NLP as part of his addiction recovery. And even Robbie Williams. Now, everybody knows Robbie Williams. If you've seen him in concert, he's absolutely amazing. But he uses an NLP technique before going on stage to quell his nerves. So he uses it for performance enhancement. And even Yvonne, my mum, she has used NLP techniques. She's also a master NLP practitioner, but she's used NLP techniques to develop a survival mindset after she was diagnosed with cancer a couple of years ago. And I'm going to introduce you to a few people later on who I've worked with who have used NLP to address issues in the workplace or around their career. So it's not just for depression, anxiety, and illness. Of course, that's my how I have used NLP, but the techniques can be applied to any area of your life. So I want to dive in now and help you understand how your mind works. So who is ready to get into this? I'm just assuming that you're all putting your hands up, even though I can't see you. So number one is awareness. Okay, it's about becoming aware so that you can take control. And this really starts with understanding your unconscious mind. So I want to explain the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is like the library of your life. Okay, the memory of every event that you've experienced in your life is stored in your unconscious mind, every single one. It's like what happened, how we reacted, and the emotions that you felt. They're all stored in your mind and in your body. And then when we encounter a similar situation down the track, our unconscious mind goes, hang on, we've done this before. I know how you should feel and how you should react. So it's like it reaches into that library and takes that book off the shelf. Okay, so we make a decision at that time to store it like that. It may not be the best decision we've ever made. And you may think, I didn't make that decision, but you did. You made an unconscious decision. And this creates a pattern, and that's why we find it so hard to change. If we think of an example, I'm just going to choose an easy one. I'm sure everyone here has made a decision at some point in their life to either give something up. So maybe it might be a habit like smoking or giving up chocolate. That's quite a popular one. Or maybe it's to eat more healthy or go to the gym more times a week. Okay, so everybody's usually made a decision like that before. And you make this conscious decision to do one of these things. Now, did the habit stick? Like, did the new habit stick? Did you start eating healthy on a regular basis? Did you stick with going to the gym 3 times a week? Did you stick with quitting smoking at that time? If you did, well done. Fantastic. You are in the minority. But chances are you didn't stick to it, even if you did for a little while. And then you go and try and do that again, 6 months down the track or a year down the track, and the same thing happens. You give up, you quit again, or you don't quit if you're trying to quit something. And it's because you've stored the memory of what you did last time, that perceived failure. It's not failure, but perceived failure. You've stored that in your unconscious mind, and that has become your default position for this situation in the future. So you made the decision consciously, but that doesn't matter, because based on your past, your unconscious mind already has a plan. And let me explain why. It's because approximately 95% of thought, emotion, and learning occur in the unconscious mind. So without our awareness. Oh, note from Megan, just going to have to hop out. Okay, no problem. Thanks for joining us for the beginning, Megan. And I look forward to sending you the recording. So up to 95% of thought, emotion, and learning occur in the unconscious mind. So let me explain that with this example. So this is an iceberg. Okay, we've all seen a picture of the iceberg. So in this case, your body notices that it's dehydrated. Okay, now you don't consciously think I'm dehydrated, but your body knows. Your unconscious mind knows. So it sends a signal through the vagus nerve to say that your mouth is dry. And so you subconsciously notice that your mouth is dry, which causes you to consciously reach for a drink. Okay, so that is your unconscious and your conscious mind at work. Majority of your mind is working without you even thinking about it. And actually, from ages 0 to 7 years, we're not even conscious. I mean, we're physically conscious, of course, but we're completely ruled by our unconscious. And that's because our brain is running at a lower vibrational frequency than our conscious mind from the brain activity perspective. You know, imagination and real world are one and the same for kids. And those of you who are parents will know that. But that's children. What's our excuse as adults? The thing is that we're all running off neural programs that we install as a child. And I want to demonstrate this for you now. So we're just going to do a quick activity. It's easy. You don't have to move. You can do it with your camera off. That's okay. So I just want you to sit still for a moment now and notice your breath. So close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so, or just lower your gaze. And if you're watching the recording, you can do this as well. And just take a few slow breaths. Notice where you feel this breath. Do you feel it in your nose? In your chest? Perhaps you feel your belly moving. What does it feel like? Is it cold? Is it hot? What sound does it make, if any? Now open your eyes. Now 30 seconds ago, you were unconsciously breathing as you do 24/7. Okay, and as I asked you to sit still and notice your breath, you moved into your subconscious. Okay, your breath started coming into focus, and then you were consciously breathing in and out, slowly, noticing how it felt, what the temperature was, and what it sounded like. And this happens in all activities of our life. So it's like this. Imagine your life is a bus. Until you become aware of what is really happening, what the actual problem is, it's like you're sitting on the back of the bus. Okay, you're not in the driver's seat. You're not in control. Your unconscious mind is calling the shots based on your past experiences. So when you increase this awareness, you put yourself back in the driver's seat of the bus, so to speak. You're in control of where you're driving. So awareness is the biggest missing puzzle piece. And all change begins with awareness. Okay, so how do we bring awareness? I've got 2 tools for you. The first one is to breathe. And Evie, I know you'll be really familiar with this one, of course. It sounds really, really simple, and it is. Now, of course, I am not talking about the breathing that you do all day, every day. That is the unconscious breathing that we demonstrated, that we talked about a moment ago. I'm talking about intentional breathing. Now, it doesn't take long, and you can do it anytime, any place, without any other resources. Most of us spend our life shallow breathing. That is from the chest, which tells our body that we're in a state of stress because we are existing in that sympathetic nervous system. And shallow breathing also restricts that amount of oxygen intake and the removal of the carbon dioxide. And that can trigger things like a heightened sense of alertness, muscle tension, and increased heart rate, which, of course, we can all associate those types of feelings with anxiety. On the other hand, the diaphoretic breathing, or that deep belly breathing, involves the whole diaphragm, and it engages the lower abdominal muscles. And this type of breathing promotes optimal oxygenation, and it triggers a relaxation response, okay, which reduces the heart rate and blood pressure while promoting that sense of calm and well-being. So that's when our parasympathetic nervous system is engaged. And so introducing this intentional breathing into your day is simple, and it needn't take long. You can do it at home. You can do it at desk. Of course, we are talking predominantly about the workplace today. this is something you can do at your desk or in a meeting room. Better still, make it intentional and take 5 minutes out away from your desk to breathe. It could even be a group exercise that you do at work. Now, even if you work from home and you're all coming together on a Zoom meeting, you could implement this as the first few minutes of every meeting or at the end of every meeting. And you can simply start with the exercise of box breathing. Now, most people have heard of box breathing. If you've heard me talk before, you've definitely heard about box breathing. It's easy to Google, but essentially you think of a square, it's got 4 sides, and we inhale for the count of 4, hold it for the count of 4, exhale for the count of 4, and hold for 4. So 4, 4, 4, 4. It's very, very easy. Even better is exhaling for longer than you inhale, because this really signals to the parasympathetic nervous system to engage and that it's okay to rest and digest. So repeat this 3 times a day for a week and notice the difference in how you feel in your mind and in your body. I guarantee you will feel a difference. So remember, the next time that you're feeling stressed, or if you have a team member who is feeling stressed, it may seem like a strange thing to say to them, but sit down with them and take them through some breathing exercises. Take a few conscious breaths. The next tool is simply get it out of your head. Okay, this is my favorite tool for bringing awareness to a situation. Of course, we're talking about awareness in this first point. Call it journaling, call it keeping a diary, call it whiteboarding. I don't care what you call it. Just get it out of your head. Okay, and in fact, if you study any successful person, like really successful person or coach, they will tell you that this is a non-negotiable exercise. If you want to ditch stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, you have to get the information out of your head. And there's a lot of organizations who already recommend professional journaling. I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's also a client, and journaling is one of the tools that we introduced in her life, which has made a big difference. And she's since introduced it in her workplace. And she's Googled it. Professional journaling is a thing. Who knew? So, we've all got these ideas and these to-do lists and all this negative self-talk piling up in our brain, and it feels really heavy when we hold on to it, doesn't it? Yeah. Then we often experience frustration because the people around us aren't responding to all the things in our head. Communication becomes really difficult because it's hard to dialogue in a calm and reasonable way when we feel overwhelmed. And again, you could apply this to your personal life or your workplace. And that's when things can boil over and lead to bigger problems in the workplace or at home. So I'm sure some of you here can relate to this. As a leader, perhaps there's times where you've probably felt like you are carrying the weight of the organization on your shoulders, or even the weight of the world. Feeling frustrated that nobody can read your mind. And to get past overwhelm, we need to learn how to process what's in our mind and let go of that garbage that just keeps repeating. And there's a simple way to start, and that is to get it out of your head. Okay, get yourself a pen, get a piece of paper, get a whiteboard, write it down. Now, there's also the sciencey benefit to writing it down. Okay, for example, evidence shows that when you write down a goal, describing it vividly and in great detail, you're more likely to accomplish it. And in addition, if it's a goal or a project at work, it's easier for other people to visualize and therefore understand exactly what you're trying to portray. And the second thing in that is that when you write something down, you are encoding it. So this is the biological process by which things are analyzed in our mind. What gets stored in our long-term memory, and in turn, what gets discarded. So writing improves that encoding process. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I know that I've had experiences where, I've gone to a seminar. I'm a note taker, always have been. Now, often after that seminar, I could write pages and pages of notes. Often I won't even look at those notes again. But the mere fact that I've written it down, that simple act of writing it down, means that I have encoded it in my brain and it actually sticks better. Okay, so there is a reason for that. And when you get the thoughts out of your head and onto paper, do you know what happens? Instant relief. Like you literally get that feeling of, oh my goodness. So you get a fantastic feeling, that instant feeling of relief as well. So if you want to ditch the overwhelm at work or at home, start writing things down. And I don't just simply mean making another to-do list. It's so much more than that. Okay, it's about capturing your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions on the page. And I know when we talk about emotions and feelings, we don't often relate that to work, but oh my goodness, they are there, aren't they? We have all the same thoughts, feelings, emotions happening at work as we have happening at home. So it is very relevant for the workplace. And as I said, this should be a non-negotiable for everyone. And I don't often use the S word. I don't like to use the word should, but this should be a non-negotiable for everyone, especially if you identify as an overthinker. Hands up, even though I can't see you, hands up if you identify as an overthinker. Those of you on the recording as well, be honest. Or as if you identify as somebody who is easily overwhelmed. Okay, this tool is for you. So do it every day, do it several times a day. When something happens, when something doesn't happen, and when you have an idea. Okay, I guarantee you will notice, you'll begin to notice a change in the way that you feel and in the way and in what you become aware of, because as I said, we're talking about awareness. And as leaders, it's something you should be doing to lead by example. There's that S word again. But in this context, it makes sense. Leading by example is really, really important. You know, share the benefits with your team members. Like I said before, you could implement this as bringing in, getting it out of your head at the beginning of a meeting or at the end of a meeting, or, you know, the end of a day. The last 5 minutes of everybody's day is just getting stuff out of their head. Okay, so we've talked about awareness as our first main point, and I want to share a success story with you here. So meet Tom. Now, this is a stock image. This isn't actually Tom, but let's pretend it is. So until recently, Tom thought that his biggest problem in the workplace was procrastination. And it was having a major effect on his work life, but he was also starting to realize that it was creeping into his personal life. You know, at work, he would get overwhelmed at the whole task. He'd look at the whole task and it would overwhelm him so much that instead of diving in, even when he knew what to do, he would find ways to avoid it. Like he wouldn't even start the project. And this led to him missing deadlines. And this didn't go unnoticed by the leadership team either. You know, and then he had this terrible feeling of guilt. And ultimately, it was creating anxiety for him. You know, every morning he would wake up feeling anxious about work. So what did we do? We took a deep dive in to find out what the root cause of the problem was, because as I've said a few times, what you think is the problem is generally not the problem. And it wasn't that Tom had too much work to do. You know, he wasn't being given too much work. It wasn't that there weren't enough hours in the day or the week to get it done. And it wasn't because Tom was lazy. He's far from lazy. And in fact, procrastination has nothing to do with laziness. It was because somewhere in the past, Tom had had several experiences that had affected him deeply. And he'd become fearful. And because he didn't know what else to do, he held on to those emotions in his unconscious mind and in his body. You know, he made that decision unconsciously to hold on to it, something that we all do. And using a technique called timeline therapy, I helped Tom access these memories and allowed him to release these emotions that he'd been holding on for more than 2 decades. Now, until we did this, Tom wasn't even aware that these experiences were still impacting him. And of course, we did some more work there. In addition, we worked out some clear strategies for him to move forward. And the result, well, you can see it here. he said, you've probably read the slide, but he said, this morning I woke up for the first time in as long as I can remember with no anxiety about the workday ahead. And this is somebody who was waking up every day feeling anxious about work. Now, I am working with the organisation that Tom works with. We do workshops every couple of months. So he was educated. He'd basically heard the information I'm sharing with you today. So he'd begun to understand, become aware. And then we did one session together. We did this timeline therapy. And this was the result. Now, of course, there are other things in Tom's life that we would need to address if he wanted to move forward, but this had a significant impact on him. So what you can learn from this is that when you become aware of what the actual problem is, you're able to address it properly, and you can jump back into the driver's seat of the bus, so to speak. So that's tool number one, increase your awareness. And I've given you two simple tools to help you become aware, breathing and getting it out of your head. So are you ready for number two? I'm going to just take a drink of water, excuse me. Okay, so number two is choice. So to demonstrate this point, I want to teach you all about the filters of the mind. Awesome, getting some thumbs up. Thank you so much for interacting with me. I love that. Okay, so when I learned all about the filters of the mind, everything began to fall into place for me. Okay, this was the biggest secret. I talked about secrets. This was the biggest secret that helped me overcome years of depression and anxiety. And I refer to it on a daily basis, both in my own life and with clients. So get ready. All right. This is Homer J. Simpson. I'm just going to check in because we did have some issues with the slides earlier, but I'm hoping that everybody can see Homer Simpson on their screen. Just give me a thumbs up or a wave. I'm getting a laughing emoji. Awesome. Thank you. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. So this is Homer. Now, every time we experience an event, there are 2 million bits of information per second coming into our mind. Okay, so that is what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we taste, what we smell. All of our senses are taking in all of this information, 2 million bits of information per second. But our brain simply cannot handle that much information. So it does one of three things. It deletes, distorts, or generalizes the information. Now, that's working both for us and against us. It's working for us because if it didn't filter this information, we would be in complete sensory overload all of the time, and we just couldn't manage that. But it's working against us because our unconscious mind is making decisions for us based on the past rather than letting us make the decision. So these filters, they're listed here. Okay, so we've got language, attitudes, memories, decisions, metaprograms, values, and beliefs. Now, I'm not going to go through each of these in great detail. I do have something that I'm going to send to you where that it does give you a little bit more information. But essentially what happens is when you experience an event, that information goes through every single one of these filters every single time. You know, just to give you a couple of small examples, if somebody speaks to you in French and you don't understand French, that information, that sentence that they say goes through the language filter, and your unconscious mind goes, I don't know what language that is. I don't understand it. So I'm just going to delete the information. Okay, so that's an example of what happens. And then it still goes through the others. A good example for the workplace is attitudes. You know, the attitudes filter comprises, you know, frames of mind. It's like the glasses through which we see the world, you know, rose-colored or otherwise. And they can really distort the perspective positively or negatively. So, you know, a person with a positive attitude toward work, where they see it as a place to self-actualize and create value for others, they're going to have a very different experience at work to someone with a negative attitude toward work who merely sees it as a way to pay the bills. So the information that comes in is going to filter through all of those filters every single time. And then essentially what happens is that creates an internal representation for us, a picture in our mind. And that picture creates a state. So the state that a state of mind, you've heard of that. So we might be in an angry state of mind, or fearful or sad. And that state of mind shows up in our physiology, how we feel. If we're scared, we might, cower. If we're angry, we might have a certain look on our face. And then that ultimately comes out in our behavior. So we're left with the remnants of all of that information. So it starts off as 2 million bits per second, and it comes down to about 134 bits after it's gone through all of those filters. So it stands to reason that when you change those filters, you can change your reality. So why are we stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed? It's because of everything that is stored in our filters and the patterns that we've created over the years. So why is it important that we know and understand how our mind filters the information? Like, why am I telling you about this today? It's because it gives us a choice. Okay, and that's what we're talking about. Point number 2 is choice. What people don't realize is that there is always a choice. But sometimes that choice is such a microsecond, like it happens in a nanosecond, that we don't believe it's even there. We think, what choice did I have? I just couldn't help myself. Who's ever said that? Be honest. I have. But when you have awareness of the filters of your mind, the space to choose your response rather than just act like a jerk, and by that I mean have that knee-jerk reaction, becomes bigger. Okay, that space for choice becomes bigger. And the point of this is that you have more choices available to you than you think that you do, then you're probably taking right now. So, let's look at an example of something a leader might face. And of course, this could be relevant to any team member or even in a relationship outside of work. So let's say that you've got a team member who is responsible for updating the database. It's important that certain information is written in a specific way and put in the right place in the CRM. Okay, now on numerous occasions, you might have given that team member feedback that they're not doing it right. Okay, they're using the right codes maybe, but they're putting the information in the wrong place. And of course, that means that your data isn't being recorded correctly, and therefore you can't analyze it properly. Now, the relationship between you and that team member becomes increasingly frustrating. Communication might even become abrasive between you, makes you both want to avoid each other. And in turn, this can put strain on the rest of the team. I'm sure there's a few of you nodding along right now, whether you're live or watching the recording, you're all thinking, yeah, I've been in this situation. Might not be data, but something. Now, you have a choice. Now, you can continue to be frustrated with the team, with the team member, and you can let it impact the team and hope that at some point they might just quit or they might eventually get it. Or you can recognize the differences between you and make an effort to understand them better. Okay, so we all know that we can't change someone else, but we can influence them. But in this case, you might make a time to have a calm, professional conversation with them to find out how they learn best and find a way to adapt communication to them. So in the past, you might have simply given them verbal instructions. You need to use these codes and you need to put it in this place. And, that's the end of the story. But perhaps this person, and in conversation, you can unpack this, perhaps this person is a visual person. And all you need to simply do is write the instructions on a whiteboard or draw a picture for them or actually show them in the CRM. And then if you write those instructions down and they've got them available to them next time, all they need to do is follow the instructions. So it might actually simply be just about getting to understand them better. And you have a choice to do that. Okay, it might be difficult to start that conversation to begin with, but ultimately it opens up the lines of communication. So how do we find more choices? We have to recognize the filters of the mind. So, for example, one that I hear a lot in organizations, of course, is that team morale is low, or perhaps the culture is a bit negative. You know, think about this. If you think about those filters of the mind, which you can still see on the screen there, in this case, what language are you using? You know, look at yourself personally to begin with. Of course, this is something that you can do with the whole team, but what language are you using? Are you using negative language? You know, does everybody feel like you're always being negative or saying negative things? You know, you have a choice to switch that around to be more positive. What kind of attitude do you bring to the office? Do you walk in every morning, you know, without a smile on your face, shoulders hunched, and sort of go, as you walk into the office and say, don't talk to me until I've had my coffee? I mean, I do understand that. I do love coffee in the morning. But if that's the kind of attitude that and energy that you're bringing to the office, then that could be impacting the team morale, how the rest of the team feel. You know, are your values aligned with the organization? So the question is, how do I shift from one to another? And the first step is becoming aware of these filters of the mind. And then you make a choice about how to, like, what to do from there. And I've created a tool to help you. Now, I've just put a little screenshot here for now, but I will send this to you. So it's got all of the filters listed there, as you can see on the left-hand side. So what it's about is identifying the current filter. So as if you use that example I was just talking about, team morale, look at the current language, the current attitude, the current values and beliefs, like whatever you think, whatever filters you feel are relevant in this situation. And you don't just need to do it yourself. As I said, you can get your whole team to do this. And then look at the results of what the current filters are getting you. And if you don't want that result, if that's not the desirable result, which of course it's not because you're telling me it's a problem, what is the desired result? What do you want the language to be, the attitude, the values, the beliefs? And then what action do you need to take to make that change? Okay, so, and you go down all of those, of course. And as you can see, this is a very, very simple tool, but it demonstrates the choices that you have in any given situation. And you could use this in your personal life as well. But using this in the workplace, you can facilitate a conscious conversation around behaviors, attitudes, values, etc., and you can begin to make changes. So I have created a PDF for you. You are welcome to, I'm hoping that this chat box isn't in the way for you, but that you can scan that QR code and download that now straight from our website. As you'll see on the back, it's got an explanation of the filters of the mind, because I haven't gone through them in detail today. If you miss that QR code, you will receive a link in a follow-up email. For those of you watching the recording, you will get that link, or you can simply go to our website and download it from our resources page. So that is point number 2, choice. And I want to give you an example of someone who has realized the power of choice, and it's made quite the impact. So I want you to meet Ali. Okay, now Ali came to me feeling extremely anxious and overwhelmed, and she was very emotional. Now, she felt like she was walking around on eggshells with her family and even at work. And at home, she couldn't even engage in, you know, a simple after dinner conversation. Like if anybody questioned her, she felt under attack and she would react emotionally or angrily, and it would affect her for days. And this was happening at work as well. So you can imagine how that went down at work. You know, somebody would question something that she did, and not in a disrespectful way, just simply asking a question, and it's like her hackles would come up. And this was creating a massive problem. She was at the point where she was going to look for a new job because she thought that the job was the problem. She was even questioning her relationship, and everything was bugging her. She was confused why she felt like this, because Ali is, in general, a very positive and kind person. So something wasn't adding up. So what did we do? I taught Ali about the filters of the mind. It's one of the first things that we did, and how they were impacting her reactions. what she said, what she did, how she felt, and how essentially what she'd experienced in the past was driving her decisions. You know, she was so overwhelmed and stressed that her unconscious mind had taken over and it was making decisions on her behalf, just like we talked about earlier. So knowing this, Ali had a choice. She could do the work. She could do the deep dive. She could do the coaching to clear all of this, or she could risk losing her relationship and her job, her sanity, basically. And she chose to do the work. Now, it was hard. There were tears. You know, there were forward steps, there were backward steps, but she did it. And now Ali is a different person. As you can see, if you read the slide, she says, now I'm confident. I feel a sense of peace and calm and happiness. And they were the most important things to Ali, to feel calm, because she was so used to not feeling that. She says, I'm grounded, I'm more positive, and I'm a better person to be around. I feel alive. Amazing words coming from someone. When I met her in the first place, she was everything but all of those things. So to reiterate, when you have awareness of the filters of the mind, the space to choose your response rather than react in that knee-jerk way becomes bigger. And that's what it's all about. It's learning to respond rather than reacting. And when you increase your awareness, you realize the choices that are available to you, and you're able to take a step back and take appropriate action. You know, as I said, respond rather than react. You take control of that wheel on the bus. So that is point number 2, choice. So there's awareness and there's choice. Are you ready for number 3? It's the big one. Number 3 is change. Who just got chills? So you might be starting to recognize some areas in your life, perhaps in the workplace, where you can see that these filters are driving the bus, so to speak. Okay, or perhaps you're thinking of a particular problem that you have and beginning to evaluate the filters around this problem. And if you want to share anything in the chat box, you're more than welcome. Now, this is good, okay? With this awareness, you'll realize that you have choices. And it's only when you become aware of these choices that you're able to make the change. Okay, you can't change something if you don't know what it is, can you? So you have to become aware of it first. Now, the purpose of learning this today is to become aware of what's happening in your mind, okay? If you're a little apprehensive about change, that's okay. That's why I asked how people were feeling there, because often when we talk about change, most people go, ooh, I don't like it. But that's good, because it's only when we're uncomfortable that we're motivated enough to take action. And action is where it's all at, isn't it? So I know that change can be uncomfortable, and that's why I loved this meme that I found. It's not a quote from Lisa Bilio, but I found it on her page. She said, bad news, you're growing and it's uncomfortable. Good news, it's uncomfortable, but you're growing. And I just love that. You know, who here knows that change makes them uncomfortable, or who resists change? Whether you're live or watching the recording, have a think about that. You know, it is natural to experience resistance to change, okay? Physiologically, we are designed to avoid discomfort. Okay, if we have the opportunity to change something, but we don't have to, if it's not bad enough, if it's not hurting us enough, most of us will keep the status quo because it's easier. We are more likely to do the same thing we did yesterday than do something different today. That's how our brain works. Our brain is physiologically designed to keep us comfortable and safe. This is why most of us fear change or feel a little uneasy around it. And we're all fearful of something, whether we admit it or not. But those who are courageous enough and open to change are the ones who will benefit. Okay, we can prepare ourselves to make change by investing in ourselves, which is what you've done by coming today. You've invested the time in yourself to come and learn this today. Or if you're watching the recording, you're investing the time sitting down and watching this. Okay, and you're doing it perhaps either for your own personal benefit or for your team's benefit. So I have a question for you about this, and you can pop your answers in the chat here. What kinds of things do you invest in during your life? What do you invest in? We all invest in different things. Yep, family, absolutely. Thanks, Kat. Invest time in your family. Nutrition, yep, absolutely. Time and money can go into nutrition. Relationships, of course. Fitness, yes. Great answers. Even the tangible things we invest in, yes, health, thank you. We invest in a house. I invested in this house. I invest in my superannuation, so I'm investing in my future. And what happens when you invest in something? Yeah, growth. Thank you, Evie. When you invest in something, it grows. Warren Buffett himself said the best investment you can ever make is investing in yourself. And if you want to make immediate positive change, then you need to take action and invest in yourself or in your workplace. You know, stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, they cost organizations hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions of dollars every year. And you can address the perceived problems at work. And notice I said perceived problems because they're usually not they're not the actual problem, they're the symptom. Because those things are rarely the driver. Okay, it's the experiences that our staff or our team have had in the past or are currently experiencing at home, outside of the workplace. And as leaders, it really is our duty to support them. You know, in doing so, you'll notice a huge improvement in productivity and well-being within the organization as well. You know, we talked a bit about staff morale before, team morale, culture. When you invest in your team, you make improvements. So like I said on the last slide, change can be uncomfortable. So now it's time to get uncomfortable. You are here today for a reason, or you're watching this today for a reason. You know, you have the awareness, you've seen your choices, you actually have to make the change now. You have to follow through with the choice. A lot of people make psychological choices and then they don't take action. You know, so as we said in the earlier slides, change comes from taking action. And I want to introduce you to someone who took action and she made huge changes in her life. Meet Monica. Okay, Monica and I met at a networking event and I engaged her as a marketing consultant for our business. And when she learned what I did, she became quite intrigued. And as we got to know each other, she gradually opened up about how she was feeling. Now, Monica had been quite stuck. There's that word again. She'd been quite stuck for a long time. She loved what she did, but something wasn't quite right. She was lacking direction. She didn't know what was really important to her. And as a result, she was quite unmotivated and ultimately unhappy. And this was spilling over into her personal life as well. So as a result, she was highly anxious. She couldn't make decisions on her own. She needed buy-in from someone for every single decision that was coming up. She needed a lot of validation from others. And she was reacting emotionally on a regular basis, which for her was a problem. And we began working together soon after. And like with Ali, we took a deep dive to uncover the root of the problem. And they ran deep. And they had nothing to do with her career or her work life, which is what she had originally come to me about. But it was affecting those areas greatly. So what did we do? Well, what did Monica do? Monica made radical changes in every area of her life. Okay, she closed her business. She went back to the corporate workforce where she was much happier and, you know, making a steady income. She made dramatic changes in her personal life. And as a result, she is a completely different person. In fact, I've met a lot of her friends and family now over the last year, and they've told me how they've seen a hugely positive change in her since we've worked together and since she's made these changes. So she became aware, She realized her choices and she changed. She took action. So what can you take from this? It's that change is necessary for all of us. Okay, you may not need to make radical changes like Monica did. You may simply want to make or need to make some tweaks. And, if we're talking about your team and in the workplace, again, there may be radical changes that need to be made, or you may just need to make some tweaks. And being aware of that is the first step. Okay, so if you're feeling stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed on a regular basis, then something is wrong. Okay, work and personal life doesn't have to be like that, and there is a solution. Okay, you become aware, you understand your choices, and you embrace change. Now, it won't always be easy, but it will be worth it. Now, I know that some of you, whether live or on the watching the recording, will be sitting here thinking, Beck, how does this apply to my workplace or my life? Well, everything that you've heard today is aimed at helping you take control of the bus, so to speak, to get you back in the driver's seat. Okay, we all have habits, thoughts, and beliefs that are limiting. They're running like a default program in our unconscious mind. They're in control at the moment and directing a lot of the action that we take in our life. And, this is why we all have patterns that we can't tend to explain, although I'm sure that you have a much better idea about why you have these patterns or where they've come from now after just this last hour. But those patterns, they affect every area of your life, professionally or personally. And that's why I talk about when I go to work with organizations, we find out what they think the problem is at work or what the problems are at work, but we take a much deeper dive and we look at what is the root cause of this program, because they're not the drivers. The drivers are the things happening outside of work. Okay, and when you understand this will help you as a leader. It will help you understand your team better. It will help you lead your team better. It is the beginning of helping your team eliminate stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in the workplace, which is why you were here today. So what now? Today is all about helping your team ditch that stress, anxiety, and overwhelm, as I've said. So if you truly want to support your team's well-being, you can take this further. Okay, so I'm offering a free 30-minute fast path session where I come to you and I unpack from you the filters of the mind of your workforce. Okay, and at the end of that session, you have the tools to help your team begin eliminating this stress, anxiety, and overwhelm from their lives and from your workplace, as well as a plan for ongoing support for your team's well-being. Okay, it's really easy to book. You can see on the screen at the moment, there's a QR code. You can scan that. It will take you to my diary. You have direct access to my diary to book that 30 minutes. Okay, now this is also available to those of you who want to work individually, okay, or explore this individually, not in a team or a workplace front. And you can simply use the same code to book your time. So that brings us to the end of the webinar, but I'd just like to formally finish off and thank you all for being here today. Thank you for your input. Thank you for answering questions. It's been great to have you. Thank you for those of you who are watching the recording, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.